I don't think that he would have been so successful and where he is now if it wasn't for those lessons. And it could have quite frankly been those weren't even real lessons in terms of doing things wrong. Maybe he was doing the right thing all along. Maybe that's just how he got to the point where he is now. And I don't believe that there's a one size fits all blueprint that's going to help you get from, here to there. The road that we take it's completely individual, and following someone's guide to do so, I think that's a recipe for disaster. Because I think if you were to follow every single step of the way what someone else has done before you, you're not going to get where they were. Because their situation's different. They were born into a different household. They have a different mind to you. They have more money than you. Maybe they've got less money than you. Maybe their desperation's more. Maybe their desperation's less. And maybe that's just what worked for them. So when they give you advice, the best thing is don't listen. Like, genuinely. I don't think that listening to them and doing what they say is the best advice. And maybe even me saying that, don't listen to what I'm saying. That's the thing. Like, I don't think that advice is even helpful. Because there's just too much of it. Too much of it just contradicts each other. People will advise you. People will tell you what to do. Do you listen? I don't think so. Honestly, I don't think so. There is advice. There is direction. Mentoring. They're all well and good. If it's not an objective truth, if it's not an objective thing that you can't measure or track, which is very rare, then can we really take it seriously? It's advice. I don't think that we should just take advice for, let's say, the word that they promise. I mean, advice shouldn't be promised. It shouldn't be something where it's like, okay, you do this, you get that. That's not what advice is. And if it was as easy as there is a blueprint, everyone would do it. If someone was to tell me something 10 months ago and someone was to tell me something, the exact same thing now, I might take action on it now because I understand why it's important, but back then I had no idea why it's important. So advice can also just differ from personal, understanding. Planning and thinking about doing something aren't the same as actually doing it. The only moment when you are genuinely making progress is when you take real tangible action. And I think that should summarize it. Because the only thing, or the only time when you're doing the thing is when you are doing the thing. If you're planning to do the thing, you aren't doing the thing yet. You always have to make sure that if you want to start doing the thing, start doing the thing. Thinking about it isn't doing the thing yet. Doing the thing is doing the thing. Welcome back to this episode of the SCULPTED podcast, guys. New setup. Honestly, I want to give this one a go, so we'll see how it looks aesthetically. The audio should be sounding much better. I think it looks nice. Hopefully it looks nice. It looks nice here from what I can see, but that's also up to my editing now, so hopefully we can make it look even better. But it has been a while actually since I've done one of these episodes. A lot of the time I probably film all at the same time for that month, and it's probably been about maybe 3 weeks since I did the last episode. But yeah, been a while, and pretty keen to talk about some things. Now, I think that one of the most interesting ones would probably be this episode. I'm pretty keen to do this episode. I'll do a sequence of episodes, not events. That's not what you say, sequence of events. I'll do a sequence of episodes here, and the first one that I wanted to do was called Stop Planning and Start Doing. Now, coincidentally, I'm actually wearing a shirt that I made for an advert that I'm doing in the upcoming days. Now, this was just a test shirt. This isn't the final one that I'm using. The model that we're using as the shirt that she will use, and this was just a test for it. But I ended up making it. I think it's pretty nice, to be fair. You can see it says "Stop Dreaming." Oh, I should go on that. You probably heard it in the distance there. Stop dreaming, start doing, and got the SCULPTED writing there. And then we've got the SCULPTED logo at the back, which you can't see, but anyways, it's there. And you will see the advert for the SCULPTED app pretty soon. Now, everything with the SCULPTED app, live free, I'll catch you up on a little bit later. But this episode, as I said, stop planning, start doing. And it ties in well to what this t-shirt even says. Stop dreaming and start doing. Now, there is a lot in this episode. And I've done a lot of research, as I normally do for these episodes. I like to be informed, and I like to, say the right things, because I'm aware that sometimes I won't say the right things. So if I come informed, that helps. But the big thing about this is actually looking into, is there a reason why, let's say, you shouldn't act immediately. Is there a better way of doing it? No, I don't know. Well, I'm assuming that I don't know in this instance when I'm speaking to you now. I do know. And I've done the research to figure this out. Now, is it better to plan for 5 years, the perfect entry, or immediately start and learn along the way? I think that a lot of people will, dream about, what they should do. They'll dream about the perfect entry. They'll do all this work to make sure that they've got the perfect entry. They'll create their meal plan before they even, start using it. They'll start their workout routine on paper before they even start doing it. And they're planning and planning and planning. And this is even, one barrier above the people who even start to just say that they want to do something without doing it. So we're already, putting out maybe 50% of the population. So we're talking about the top percent of people who do things and, let's say, start to do it well even. So the point that I want to talk about first is the paralysis of overlapping. Now, according to a study published by Harvard Business Review, over 50% of managers and executives suffer from analysis paralysis, where excessive data and planning hinder decision-making and action-taking. Now, that's kind of talking about how too much can hinder the now. And now that could be for a variety of different reasons. It could be too much information that is being, let's say, tossed up between the right decision. I do see that a lot in today's society. Like, I listened to a great podcast the other day, and it was really, really fantastic. But it made me question so much. And I was thinking, it's actually made me question so much that it's unhelpful, because it's given so much good advice. But if I was to think about it rationally, I probably would get the exact opposite advice from someone equally as successful as this next person. And the only thing that I can distinguish from that is that it's not a one size fits all. Success, quote unquote success, or what you set out to achieve, no one knows how to get there. No one does know how to get there. And when people sell you this blueprint plan, when people tell you this is the right way, you shouldn't do this, you should always do this, I struggle to believe it. And it sells because it's a blueprint. And, we'll fall into the trap of believing it. And honestly, maybe that is the right way. Maybe it is. I don't know. I truly don't know. But just thinking about it rationally here, I don't think that doing exactly what someone says that worked for them, or what they would have done, if, let's say it's like Alex Hormozy is a good example. And I've referenced this quite a few times in the podcast. He said that he wishes that he didn't do so many things at once when he was younger, because he would have been able to become so much more successful. I don't believe that. I strongly believe that the reason why he is, quote unquote, so successful, I always say quote unquote successful because my opinion of success, and I know it's kind of a cliche thing to say, oh yeah, what's your opinion of success? I don't like to use it. It's one of those words for me that I don't like to use, but it just gets the point across well. But anyways, Alex Hormozy believes that when he was younger, he shouldn't have done so many things, because then he would have been successful so much earlier. I don't believe in that. I don't think that he would have been so successful and where he is now if it wasn't for those lessons. And it could have quite frankly been, those weren't even real lessons in terms of doing things wrong. Maybe he was doing the right thing all along. Maybe that's just how he got to the point where he is now. And I don't believe that there's a one-size-fits-all blueprint that's going to help you get from, here to there. The road that we take it's completely individual. And following someone's guide to do so, I think that's a recipe for disaster. Because I think if you were to follow every single step of the way what someone else has done before you, you're not going to get where they were, because their situation's different. They were born into a different household. They have a different mind to you. They have more money than you. Maybe they've got less money than you. Maybe their desperation's more. Maybe their desperation's less. And maybe that's just what worked for them. So when they give you advice, the best thing is don't listen. Like, genuinely. I don't think that listening to them and doing what they say is the best advice. And maybe even me saying that, don't listen to what I'm saying, because it's not even the best advice. There's probably better advice out there. That's the thing. Like, I don't think that advice is even helpful, because there's just too much of it. Too much of it just contradicts each other. So take of that what you will. Don't take it all in. Don't even believe me. But I think that that's kind of what I'm saying here. And I think that's what the analysis paralysis can really do to you. And I was thinking about that very much so in my life. Just recently when I was gone, when I exercise and when I go for a run, a lot of my thoughts articulate in my mind whilst I'm doing that. And that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, I've already done all of this wrong. I've done this wrong, according to this guy. Does that mean that I stop? No. But according to him, it would. And what if that's just a part of my story? What if that's just a part of my success story? And then when I'm on a podcast in 20 years' time talking about my success story, and I'm saying, well, I was doing this, according to this guy, it was wrong. But guess what? For me, it worked. And if I didn't do those things, I wouldn't be here today. To me, that's logical. To you, I don't know. But I think that's a very good take. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to them. Figure it out yourself. Okay. Analysis paralysis. So, the Journal of Business Venturing found that entrepreneurs who engage in excessive planning are 40% less likely to launch their venture compared to those who take more action-orientated approach. So, again, I think that it's people who just drop themselves in the deep end. They'll figure it out. Now, you also have to be the person to be able to figure it out. If I was someone who was lazy and was to drop myself straight in the deep end, then I would have very, very low chance of getting where I want because I can't better myself to make it work. But in my situation, I do believe that I can better myself to make these things work. So I drop myself in these crazy situations and think, okay, if anyone's going to make it work, it'd be me. Pretty simple. Is it the right way? I don't know. Has it proven somewhat good so far? Probably not. But guess what? I don't know if the other way would have. So how do I know what the right way is? We don't know what the right way is. So for me, thinking about it, I think that just dropping yourself straight into the deep end is the best way of doing it. And people will advise you. People will tell you what to do. Do you listen? I don't think so. Honestly, I don't think so. There is advice. There is direction. Mentoring. They're all well and good. If it's not an objective truth, if it's not an objective thing that you can't measure or track, which is very rare, then can we really take it seriously? It's advice. I don't think that we should just take advice for, let's say, the word that they promise. I mean, advice shouldn't be promised. It shouldn't be something where it's like, okay, you do this, you get that. That's not what advice is. And if it was as easy as there is a blueprint, everyone would do it, right? Like the reason why it's so easy for everyone to drive, such a high percentage of the population are very competent drivers, it's because there's a very simple blueprint. Stick in the lines, look over your head, and then put your blinkers on. Pretty simple. For entrepreneurship, for football, for whatever sport that you want to play, whatever difficult endeavor it is, the blueprint is so different because what distinguishes you and me is so much more prevalent. Okay, when you're competing against everyone, it's so much more prevalent. And also, driving's fascinating for me. Driving is truly fascinating. I've had a lot of really interesting thoughts about driving because there's such a high level of the percentage who are really, really competent drivers, and even the incompetent drivers are still competent enough to get behind the wheel because it's so simple. Driving is so simple. And it's impressive that we've got such a large percent of the population who are competent drivers. Pretty competent drivers. Competent enough that they can, turn their car on and stick between the lines. Now, as I said, it's not too difficult of a task to do. And it is a pretty, it is a blueprint. It's a driving blueprint. You have to do your 120 hours in Australia. I think it's that. I don't know. I think you have to do 120 hours in Australia to get your Ps. And once you're on your Ps, you spend a year on your reds, I think, and then you go 2 years on your greens. That's a blueprint. And then hopefully by the end of it, you're competent enough. Now, some people will be competent much before they are on their full license. And then some won't be competent enough until they're on their full license. And then some won't be ever competent enough at all. And naturally, those people will probably, fade away. Maybe they'll just catch buses everywhere. Maybe they won't drive. Maybe they have someone to chauffeur them everywhere. Whatever it is, it's a natural selection process. And it's a very interesting thing for me because it's a skill that pretty much every single adult has to have in today's society that we've all, collectively accumulated over time. It's unlike walking. Walking is arguably a skill, yet some people can't walk. And when I say that, I'm obviously not taking into consideration the people who physically can't walk, like in terms of they were born with something that, stops them from walking. But I mean, some people can't get off, they can't move their feet too much. Some people are too overweight, things like that. Like even walking is kind of like similar to driving in that there's a blueprint for you to follow. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. It's interesting. It's interesting to think about that. And to me, this is a very roundabout statement of me just getting back to the point of just drop yourself into the deep end. Okay. A study from MIT Sloan School of Management shows that startups with flexible, action-oriented strategies outperform those with rigid, detailed plans by 30% in terms of revenue growth and market adaptation. I do find that very interesting, and one thing that I probably have learned through, you could say advice, and it may be the wrong advice. It truly may be the wrong advice, but I do think that it makes sense when this was rationalized to me. Now, Have I done too much around it yet? Not too much, because I don't have the means to do it yet, because I don't have the objective in front of me. But I do have the mindset so that when it is in front of me, I probably will give what they said a chance. And that example will be, okay, the Sculpted app, for example. Let's say that it starts off as what I see it starting off at. Okay, for the MVP, what you'll see when you download the app in a few months, you'll see 2 features: the to-do list and then the compass feature. And then additionally, you'll have the journal feature. These 3 things. In my head, there's 10 of those things that will eventually come out throughout the app. Then the sculpting score, and then everything else will come along. It takes a while. If you don't know much about apps, it takes ages. It costs a lot of money. I'm slowly getting there. So if you do ask me, where's the rest of the app? It's coming. Relax. I'm impatient. But the point here is that if I start the Sculpted app knowing or thinking I know where it will go, that's ignorant, because the market should tell you where you should go, not you. Now, I'm very sure as well there'll be certain cases of which the person creates the demand. So if I was to create the Sculpted app and then create the perfect product that I think people need, and it is what people need, and I was pushing for it from day one, that's what I wanted, I knew that people needed it, then I've got a very valid use case. And I think that is an exception. And I could be the exception here. But what a lot of people will say is you let the market dictate where you should go. Now, if those 2 features suck and the feedback that I get sucks, then I need to change it. And if those next features suck, and if those next features suck, then I probably need to change it. But for me, I won't change my product until I have the full features outlined, because to me, the app won't work without all of them. So that's just a disclaimer. But in the rare example that a full team will only launch their product once it is, like, in their eyes, market fit, which is very rare. And, you know, there's products like that. Like, a good example would be Clash of Clans. I saw that they recently released a new game. Now, I only saw it on LinkedIn. I don't know anything about it, but I saw that they recently released a new game out of nowhere. And that's not the traditional way of doing it. You'd probably, you know, put the MVP out and let the market dictate where you should go. That's how apps typically work. But for Clash of Clans, because they've got enough capital and they could risk it, arguably they couldn't risk too much because they don't want to ruin their brand reputation. But in this case, I assume that they had enough collective data to analyze and realize this is what the people want, therefore we can provide what they want. And then they create the demand for it, even though it might not be there, or just through brand reputation, enough people see, okay, Clash of Clans, new game, sweet, I'll play that. That's also a possibility. But the way that the lean startup methodology suggests is you test in the market. Now, this is my approach. But as I said, I'm kind of going for like a hybrid approach there, because I will also take into consideration just getting my idea of what the product should be out there first. Because I believe that through a lot of the research that I've done, through even just the user testing that I've done, it does constitute for a reasonable enough app. And maybe the demand isn't there yet, but maybe I have to create that demand, just like Whoop did. I mean, maybe 3-4 years ago when I first saw Whoop, I didn't think that I had much of a need for it until I realized that I needed it, or, you know, thought I needed it. The demand wasn't there, and you could say the demand now is artificial. Maybe there is an artificial demand with Whoop. I would probably say there is. But that's still viable. That's still a very, very viable business, a very, very my words here. It's a very, very viable business model. It's just the exception quite often. And you see Notion, for example. I think that Notion probably would have started off as something completely different. I think YouTube started off as a dating app. You look at all these different apps where they didn't start off where they are now. And that's just the name of the game, you know. Timing is sometimes adopting and just pivoting really quickly. That's typically what timing is. And actually, I'll reference the episode of what the podcast that I'm typically referring to here. It was the Netflix episode with Diary of a CEO, so Stephen Bartlett. And it was really, really good episode. As I said, I loved listening to it. It was very thought-provoking. It made me think I'm doing so many things wrong. And then I was like, I've been here before, and I've always thought that I'm doing so many things wrong. But how do I know that I'm doing things wrong if I have barely done anything yet? I think I just have to do what I say. And do it with 100% conviction. Ben Francis said that. You know, for your first 1 to 10 million, just get everything your way. Do it your way, do it your way, do it your way. See where it takes you. Now, I think that's the same thing that I have to do with my product, but I also have to let the market dictate. It's a tough, middle ground to find. Maybe I don't do it at all. Maybe I literally just go my way, and maybe my way's right. I don't know. How do I know? How do I know the right way? Until I do it. That's that analysis paralysis. Okay. An example is Mark Zuckerberg launched Facebook from his dorm room with minimal planning, focusing on quick iteration and user feedback. There we go. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started Apple with a simple prototype and continuously adapted based on user responses and market demands. Actually, Apple is a good example of that because they didn't start off with iPhones. iPhones is arguably their biggest product. Now, I think they also probably have like a monopoly on MacBooks in, the Western countries and, MacBooks. Well, they can only have MacBooks because that's theirs. But even that makes me think like when I talk about a computer, I talk about a MacBook. They own computers basically. From my bubble at least. Like anyone who I see having a computer, it's always an Apple computer. Anyone who's got a phone, it's always an Apple phone. That's definitely my environment. But they didn't start off with that. They started off as completely different products. Now, maybe they were planning on it. Maybe it was a potential product that they wanted to launch. Amazon is a very good example, just thinking off the top of my head. That was in the Stephen Bartlett episode. And it was talking about how, okay, Jeff Bezos very much was planning for Amazon to be a one-stop shop, but originally it was just books. And do you think Jeff Bezos cared about those books? If you ask me, I don't think Jeff Bezos cared about those books at all. But did it give him means for a viable company in the future? Well, evidently it did. Okay, so the next part is learning through action. And this is where it ties in, right? You learn by action, and firstly, you have to act to learn. Now, I do believe that you have to be somewhat educated. I had an interesting conversation about this with someone recently, and I do believe that you have to be somewhat educated. You can't be completely unaware. Whether that's just listening to a little video, whether that's just understanding a few key concepts, I believe that's all it takes. But if you're completely ignorant, I don't believe in that. Like, if I was to go start like a mining company, I'd probably just have to familiarize myself with how mines work at the very least. Like with the technology side of the Sculpted app and Live Free, I had to just learn a little bit about, what each of them do and how they work. I owe it to myself if I'm trying to do it. So, bare minimum, you have to just familiarize yourself with a little bit. But learning through action. So, the American Psychological Association published research indicating that experimental learning or learning by doing improves retention rates by 75% compared to traditional learning methods. That's just talking about like, okay, if I was to apply what I was just taught into applicable things immediately, it's just better than being taught it, I guess, and just saying, yeah, this is what 2 + 2 is, and then without doing the maths or the working out for it. That's kind of the rationale there, I believe. Now, the learning pyramid developed by the National Training Laboratories shows that people retain 75% of what they learn when they practice what they've learned, compared to 10% from reading and 20% from hearing, adaptive, and success. Okay, so again, kind of similar there. And that's honestly like kind of like what Live Free is, right? Like we're trying to find that ground for everyone where they can learn in their own way, whether it's through auditory, whether it's through visual, whether it's through engagement, whatever that is, Live Free will have that. And then it will also have the things that you weren't taught in school. Now, that's a little plug to Live Free. So if you haven't signed up to the Live Free waitlist, do so. And then additionally, sign up to the Sculpted app waitlist if you're curious about what the Sculpted app is, because I've also plugged that. But anyways, we were talking next about Stanford's research. Now, Stanford research shows that 68% of successful entrepreneurs attribute their success to learning from failures and adapting their strategies accordingly. I think that's kind of like what you'd naturally kind of think, unless you think about planning. Like, I do think there is a probably reasonable enough case for if you wanted to create one of the biggest companies in the world by doing like 7 years of market research and just trying to predict and dictate where, the best company could be. I do think that could work. Like, if I was to think about what my next company would be, assuming the Live Free and the Sculpted app take off, then I'd probably just try and get into a company and start my own company that's like so lucrative and so niche and exactly what so many people need. And it would probably take me ages to plan up, and I'd probably do testing here and there, but I'd probably just figure out exactly what people need and just enter there and try and make it as big as possible, as quickly as possible, assuming that the other two have taken off and I know what I'm doing. And additionally, just in a risk capital perspective, because like you need stability to do something like that, because that's so risky. Because let's say, you're working 5 years without a salary, without much of an income. Well, Actually, to be fair, there would be an income from everything else that I'd done. But you get what I'm talking about. Like, is there a case study for 1 year of planning, 2 years of action, where that's more efficient than 1 month of planning and 2 years of action? Is there a use case for that? If you're maybe doing it for the first time, I think that the action is just better than the planning, I think. But if you do know what you're doing, maybe doing that 5 years of research and market and whatnot is more beneficial than just the action part. Quite potentially. And again, I don't know. You don't know. If you think you know, either you're like really, really, really smart, experienced, and cool, and you should probably be on this podcast with me, or you're just one of me. You're just another person who's just trying to figure it out as well, or just figure out the best way for doing it for themselves. And quite arguably, I don't know if there is a best way for anyone to do it themselves, because what worked yesterday probably won't work tomorrow. So how can you frame that best for you? That's a challenge. That is very much a challenge. Now, Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, that was Spanx. Oh, I think that's like a baby wipes company, maybe. Hopefully. Might make me a little bit sus. Attributes her success to testing her products on herself and her friends, learning from their feedback and iterating her designs. I think it was. Hopefully. Okay. Richard Branson's Virgin Group started as a small student magazine and evolved into a multinational conglomerate through continuous learning and adaptation. Stanford research shows that 68% of... Yeah, I did it the wrong way around. Okay, I already said that one. But, okay, those were the two examples of Richard Branson and Sarah Blakely. So, if we go to the next part. Now, the myth of perfection timing. The myth of perfect timing. How about we just go with that? That works. Okay. The myth of perfect timing. Now, what I was saying is I don't necessarily think it is a myth. In fact, that's probably a little bit contradictory saying that it's a myth, because I do think, and this isn't out of experience, this isn't out of research, this is merely just me thinking rationally. There probably is a person, or many, many people who have done this before, where they perfectly, think about and plan about the perfect entry for a company no one's ever heard of through user research, user testing, and so many things like that. In fact, Stephen Bartlett has that, where he creates a new company out of nowhere. It actually, to be fair, happens quite a lot with successful companies or with successful people. They will start a company out of nowhere, but it's been in the works for like a few years. And that happens. And whether it takes off or not, I don't know. Whether that's a consistent pattern, if it takes off or if it doesn't, I don't know. But I think that there is a very strong use case for saying, okay, if you're starting off for your first time, just drop yourself straight in the deep end. Do it. You'll learn. And I think that I can use this example with Live Free and the Sculpted app pretty well. Not that either one are ahead of each other too much, but they're kind of similar in timing. Where with the Sculpted app, it took me so long to actually even get a development team. And even now, I had a recent hiccup. I still don't even have 2 developers. I did have 2 developers for about a month, and then 1 left. And in Live Free, it took me 2 months to find a technical co-founder. I still haven't even found a technical co-founder for Sculpted app, and it's been 10, 11 months. Like, it's kind of crazy. But when I was able to start Live Free, I was able to get ahead so quickly because I knew the things that I was missing from the Sculpted app and did it immediately for Live Free. And those lessons that I learned there helped me get Live Free up a lot quicker than the Sculpted app. Now, again, they're both pre-product. They are both in startup phase. Neither one of them are making money right now. But ideally, one of them will teach me the right way to enter this market, and hopefully I can replicate it again. But I'm dropping myself in the deep end, and I don't know the right way of doing it yet. Will I know the right way of doing it yet? Well, hopefully. Can I replicate it? I don't know. I have to figure that out. The best way, I think, to figure it out is just by doing it. And maybe the best in the world, maybe it's like Elon Musk, maybe it's, Jeff Bezos, maybe the best in the world, just figure it out really quick. And maybe they just see a few patterns and adjust and do it much quicker than the average person. I also would argue they've probably just got the risks that they can afford to do it. They don't have to think about, okay, well, if I spend a little bit over this month's budget, the kids aren't eating this week. No, the kids are eating. They're eating probably more than they need. Like, They can afford to risk these things, whereas someone who's just starting it out and they're saying, okay, well, my monthly budget for food's $2,000 alone. If I go 1 cent over it, then the kids aren't eating. Maybe they'd probably not eat first, not the kids. You probably want to give the kids food no matter what. Anyways, that's so relevant. But yeah, planning, timing. I don't know. I don't know the right answer. Honestly, I don't know the right answer, and I don't think you do either. But I do think that what I said there was I rationalized it enough to say I think there's probably a case for saying, okay, first time, do it fast, try it out. If you know a little bit more, if you've done it before, you can probably skip a little bit ahead. But I still think that planning and excessive planning isn't necessarily the best way of doing it. Okay, but there will be exceptions to that, and I did already explain how there will be exceptions to that, and there 100% are exceptions to that we know of today. Okay, a study by the University of California in Berkeley found that waiting for perfect conditions results in missed opportunities 80% of the time as market conditions change rapidly. Research found that Kaufman Foundation shows that most successful startups were launched during economic downturns or less than ideal conditions, highlighting the myth of perfect timing. Interesting. Very interesting. The Journal of Applied Psychology found that taking immediate action, even on imperfect plans, increases the likelihood of success by 60% due to the momentum and iterative learning process. A study by Northwestern University indicates that early movers in any industry gain a competitive advantage 55% of the time due to the brand recognition and customer loyalty. Amazon started as an online bookstore during the early days of the internet when e-commerce was still a nascent concept. New word. Jeff Bezos seized the moment despite the uncertainty. Google launched a highly competitive search engine market, but by continuously iterating and adapting, it became the dominant player. Now, let's look at some case studies of quick start and product evolution cases. So like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg. I believe Elon Musk is probably in here. Now, I won't talk about Elon Musk too much. I don't want to make this a political podcast. I don't want to make this like a hot take podcast. But I don't have a great opinion of Elon Musk, if I'm being honest. I don't have a great opinion on a lot of people, if I'm being honest. I would have that same opinion to myself. Like, I would also say, I could do so much more in terms of this is what I want to be. Maybe it's the same with Elon Musk. Should I hold people up in high regard? Probably not. Do I hold myself in a high regard? I mean, I'm probably evaluating those people in the same, evaluation that I'm evaluating myself in. So I'm probably, I think that's a very human thing. The same, let's say if it was imagine I've got a filter. The same filter that I'm evaluating Elon Musk on is probably the same filter that I'm evaluating myself on, because it's that's what I look for in a person. Therefore, obviously I'm going to be looking for the things that I see myself in a person. And if they don't have that, then probably it's someone who I won't like. But being as neutral as possible here, I probably don't like most people. And I'll throw that same thing at myself. Do I like myself? Yeah, I'd like to imagine I like myself. Do I do things that I disagree with? Probably not too much. And even then, do I want to even admit it? No, because that doesn't help my narrative. If I do something that's wrong, and when I say do things that are wrong, just take it with a grain of salt here, because I don't talk about questionable things that maybe I've done in my past. I'm 19. I truly haven't done too much. So it's not anything like that. But when I talk about things okay, do I want to be better? Yeah, of course I want to be better. Of course. I'm sure Elon Musk wants to be better. So is it unfair to say that I don't like him at all? A little bit. Yeah. So, you know what? I can very much respect Elon Musk and very much respect anyone who's done well for themselves. Even for people who haven't done well for themselves, I can very much respect them as well. So I don't want to completely forget about that, because it's not that I don't respect Elon Musk and what he's done. I do. But I would say I'm critical of Elon Musk, but I'm critical of everyone. And I'm probably most critical of myself. So just a bit of a self-awareness thing there. If you don't like what I say about Elon Musk, I'm not being too critical, or at least I don't mean to be too critical because I'm just evaluating him by the same kind of things that I'd evaluate myself on. And that's very, very cognitively biased. Like, I'm very aware that, like, the reason, like, why my friends are so similar to the way that I think is because I like myself, right? Like, if I didn't like myself, then I'd probably get different friends who weren't similar to me. I'd probably aspire to be like them. But even then, my view of what I think is good is still what I'd probably see in myself, or at least what I'd want to see in myself. So, yeah, that's so relevant. I went so deep in there, but a bit of a disclaimer on Elon Musk. Okay, first case study is Steve Jobs. Now, quick start. They started working on Apple in 1976 and brought it to market the same year. Product evolution. Apple initially focused on personal computers, but evolved significantly over the years. The introduction of the iPod, iPhone, and iPad transformed Apple from a computer company to a consumer electronics giant. They pivoted. The launch of the iPod in 2001 marked a significant pivot from computers to consumer electronics, driven by market demand and technological advances. That's a very interesting point. Okay, Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg launched Facebook in 2004, just a year after conceiving the idea. Facebook started as a college social network, but evolved into a global social media platform with numerous features like news feeds, marketplace, and Oculus VR integration. The pivot. The introduction of the news feed in 2006 was a major pivot, changing how users interacted with content and significantly increasing user engagement. Elon Musk, SpaceX. Quick start, founded SpaceX in 2002 and began working on the Falcon 1 rocket the same year. SpaceX's initial goal was to reduce space transmission costs, but it evolved to include ambitious space projects like Mars colonization, Starship, satellite, internet, Starlink, and human spaceflight Crew Dragon. The pivot. The successful launch of Falcon 9, the subsequent focus on reusable rockets, marked a significant shift on SpaceX's strategy, driven by the need to make space travel more economical. I don't think that's a good example, if I'm being honest, because Elon Musk also had the capital to do so, and additionally, like, the pivot was minimal. Like, a pivot that Steve Jobs made is massive for a company. Probably relatively still low risk because he's still, making the computers. The product's still there. It's probably like a decent enough product that people will constantly buy. People are going to think I'm such an Elon Musk hater if I say that, because now it just looks like I'm picking on Elon Musk. I'm not picking on Elon Musk there. I bet that, like, there's better examples, like with PayPal and that, but we chose a SpaceX one for a weird reason. Anyways, let's look at Reed Hastings, Netflix. Now, this was the guy who I believe Stephen had on his podcast, and this is the guy who kind of sparked that thought in my head. Although I did have the thought in my head prior, this kind of like evolved it a little bit more. Okay, that made me sound like a bit of a prick. Okay, Reed Hastings, meticulous planning. Spent a significant amount of time planning before launching Netflix in 1998. Initially a DVD rental service, Netflix pivoted to streaming in 2007, then to original content production in 2013. Pivot. The shift to streaming was a major pivot driven by changing consumer preferences and technological advancements. Now, I don't think they did meticulous planning at all, actually. I think that they were rapid. Like, the story that I heard was, it was Reed, I believe his name, and another guy in his car together off to work. Now, I believe that the other guy was an angel investor. He had majority equity. Reed was just, the guy doing it. He was the CEO at the time. He then became COO, and the angel investor became the CEO. And to me, it sounded as if they thought of the idea then and there, tested it, and then ran with it. Like, that's no planning at all. They literally just made the MVP like that. They got confirmation that the idea can work. It's a much easier market to do so back then as well, because technology was just the beginning stages. They literally just needed the mailman to work, basically, and it worked for them. Okay, next one. Brian Chesky, Airbnb. Meticulous planning. Spent a year refining the concept before launching Airbnb in 2008. Started as a platform for renting air mattresses and evolved into a global marketplace for unique stays and experiences. Pivot. Expanding from shared spaces to entire homes and eventually to experiences marked significant pivots, driven by user demand and market opportunities. Correlations and insights. So this is looking at all of those different examples and looking at the correlation and how they can be, well, how we can at least draw a bit of a lesson from them, whether it's the right lesson, whether it's not. Up to you. I don't know. Probably there won't be an answer here. It's just going to be left up to interpretation. Do with it what you will. But if there is a takeaway, it's that we don't know what the best way of doing it is, and I don't think we ever will. The best way is to just do it. Just do it. Just start. Don't stop. Just do it. I should have a just do it sign. Crazy. Okay. Also, I'm not going to have a just do it sign. That's obviously Nike, if you think I was being serious there. Okay. Speed of execution and iteration. Entrepreneurs who quickly transition from the idea to action, like Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk, often bring their products to market faster. This allows for rapid iteration based on real-world feedback, leading to significant product evolution and pivots. The quicker the start enables these entrepreneurs to test hypotheses and adapt to market demands more efficiently. Planning and stability. Those who meticulously plan, like Reed Hastings and Brian Chesky, often have a more refined initial product but take longer to enter the market. Their evolution and pivot tends to be more deliberate and strategic, responding to clear market trends and technological shifts. The takeaway is that adaptability and responsiveness to feedback are crucial. Quick starters benefit from early feedback and can pivot faster, while meticulous planners might have a more stable launch but need to remain agile to adapt to market changes. Now, my 2 cents is I'm kind of going for the planning and stability, although I will 100% take into consideration the speed part. Now, I can't afford to do the speed part. I don't have much capital. I can't do too much user testing. I don't have too much of an audience. It's like, okay, with the people who listen to this podcast, with the people who I know personally, let's try and get a good enough feedback for these people. Hopefully it will correlate to a larger audience. And from there, my planning hopefully will just get me there. You know, I'll say, okay, just looking at that, looking at this, put 2 and 2 together, let's make that. Now, I don't have the speed to do so. I do think that the speed comes with either just dropping yourself with an easy product and just getting it out there immediately, which definitely isn't a mobile app. Mobile app's one of the most difficult things to make from the ground up, taking like software-wise as well. Like, software's not easy. You know, for me to have a product, it will take a year and a bit. If I was to start a mowing business, all I need is a mower. Easy. I don't need a mower to do my app. I need a full-time team to make that thing, and I need a lot of money to do it, and I need a whole strategy behind it. I need all these different things. Anyways, that's kind of my take on it. I think that I do have a bit more here, but if I'm being honest, I don't think we need to go into it too much. But if we take this most simply, planning and thinking, actually, we'll go into it. This is a little bit of a takeaway alongside what I just said before about how, okay, if you're starting it for the first time, just do it. If you think you know what you're doing, or if you've got more evidence to say you know what you're doing, plan a bit more. But at the end of the day, just start taking action. And if people tell you to do something, take it with a grain of salt. Don't literally take it seriously. I think that that's a barrier to learning. Like, if someone was to tell me something 10 months ago and someone was to tell me something, the exact same thing now, I might take action on it now because I understand why it's important, but back then I had no idea why it's important. So advice can also just differ from personal, like, understanding. But planning and thinking about doing something aren't the same as actually doing it. The only moment when you are genuinely making progress is when you take real tangible action. And I think that should summarize it. Because the only thing, or the only time when you're doing the thing, is when you are doing the thing. If you're planning to do the thing, you aren't doing the thing yet. You always have to make sure that if you want to start doing the thing, start doing the thing. You know, thinking about it isn't doing the thing yet. Doing the thing is doing the thing. Just take action. Figure it out the rest of the time. Now, again, take that with a grain of salt, because that's not even great advice. Because you don't want to be an absolute idiot going into it. If I knew nothing about the mining industry, which I don't, by the way, this is just an example. If I knew nothing about the mining industry, but I was trying to make a mining company, I should probably at least understand how the logistics should work. Otherwise, I don't know how to make my company. I shouldn't just drop myself in the deep end. Although, drop yourself in the deep end, but come prepared. At the very least, just come prepared. Because if you come in completely ignorant, well, there's someone who's more prepared than you, who's doing the exact same thing, And that's just a better way to be. Again, don't take that literally. This isn't advice. Advice sucks. I don't believe in advice. The only advice that I would give is don't listen to any advice. And even that, don't listen to my advice. Because maybe for you, you should be listening to advice. Maybe you're like so far off the tracks that you need advice to keep you on the tracks. Don't listen to me. Simple. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed that one. That was like really intricate. A lot went into that. I'm not going to lie. A lot of thought, a lot of planning, a lot of notes. I hope there was value there. I do. I hope that you enjoyed this, little view. Should be different to the normal, even though the last few have been everywhere. But I might keep this. I can't, actually. I'm not keeping this. You might only get 3 or 4 episodes like this, and then probably never again. But anyways, I can't say why, but this won't last long. Anyways, I will catch you on the next episode of the Sculpted Podcast. Catch you later.